Scotland has a long and proud engineering history, perhaps at one time dominated by the shipbuilding industry. The heart of the industry was located on the south bank of the Clyde River in Glasgow. It was the famous Fairfield at Govan Yard that turned out steam-powered ships and opened up the world to commerce. Shipbuilding is still a major industry in Scotland today. However, our story is about Scotland's early days of auto production. Britain's first car was produced in Scotland by Argyle Gt. The name was later changed to Argyle Astor. Their first car was produced in 1895 in the East End of Glasgow. It was known as the dog cart and was a wood-bodied vehicle. The dog cart could carry 6 occupants. This was quite a revelation. It had a 10-horsepower 2-cylinder engine, but horsepower would steadily grow over the next decade. Then in 1901, disaster struck as fire destroyed the Glasgow plant. Argyle Gt moved production to a more modern and well-equipped factory in Paisley. Back in 1920, Galloway was formed as a subsidiary company to Argyle Gt. It was first based at Kirkcudbright. Strangely enough, it was largely run and staffed by women. For a while, the cars were advertised as a car made by ladies for others of their sex. Cars were first made in 1923 at Heath Hall, Dumfries. The factory closed in 1928. However, as things were shutting down, the workers kept busy producing the Bluebird for a try at the world land speed record in 1929. The car was powered by the same engine that Malcolm Campbell used when he broke the existing world record in 1928. Among the company's successes were the world's first off-road vehicle and another to travel over ice and snow in the South Pole. Production there ended in 1931. Argyle Motors was founded in Glasgow in 1899 at the Bridgeton Works. The first Argyle was the Voiturette, a copy of the French Renault. It featured a 2.5 horsepower engine. Over the next few years, horsepower would increase steadily. By 1906, Argyle Motors was the largest producer of cars in Scotland. That's about the time that they opened their new works in Alexandria. The new factory was never used to capacity, and the company went into liquidation in 1908. Like Phoenix from the ashes, production restarted in 1910 under a new name, Argyle Limited, with a new range of cars that included the Flying 15 and a 6-cylinder model. In 1914, the Alexandria factory was sold to the Royal Navy for torpedo production for World War I. After the war, car production was resumed on a small scale at the original Bridgeton Works, with a revival of the pre-war 9-horsepower model, now with an electric starter, but not many were sold. The company's last great gasp was at the London Motor Show in 1927, and the cars were probably produced in 1928, though still sold until Argyle closed in 1932. But the Argyle name was not about to disappear. In 1976, a new company was formed, hoping to produce a mid-engine sports car, the Argyle Gt. The 1976 prototype version featured a turbocharged Rover V8 engine, but never went into production. The V8 engine took up too much room, so they tried again in 1983 with a V6 engine so a rear seat could be added. Only a few of these were ever sold. One reason was price, and the other reason was possibly styling. Let's move on. The Albion Motor Car Company Limited was founded in 1899 in Glasgow, and later moving to Scotstoun. Business was good. Did I mention they also made trucks? In April 1931, the Albion Motor Car Company Limited was renamed Albion Motors Limited, badging its vehicles as Sunrise. They became known across the world for their excellence in engineering and dependability. So good, in fact, they were bought out by British Leyland in 1951. British Leyland eliminated the Albion name in 1972, with products continuing to be built at the same factory under the Leyland brand. In 1980, car production at the former Albion factory ceased. Here's another car. The Hillman Imp was first produced at a purpose-built factory at Linwood in Renfrewshire in 1963. The first mass-produced British car to have an engine in the back. The Imp also boasted design features such as an automatic choke and temperature, voltage, and oil pressure gauges. The Imp was made until 1976, selling almost 500,000 cars. The factory later produced the Hillman Avenger and Imp's successor, the Sunbeam. Thanks in part to the surfing craze of the 1970s, Dune Buggies became a sensation. A company called Northeast Fiberglass of Aberdeen produced the Parabug. It looked more like a Jeep than a dune buggy. These were kit cars. From its inception in 1972, only about 40 kits were sold, and the company closed shop. Perhaps ahead of its time, the Scamp was a small electric city car developed by Scottish Aviation of Prestwick in the mid-1960s. It had a top speed of 35 miles an hour and a 20-mile range between charges. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but battery and suspension problems were its downfall. Only 12 Scamps were made. The AC3000ME is thought to be the last production car ever to be built in Scotland. The 3000ME was launched at the 1973 London Motor Show, but many design changes meant that by the time it went into production in 1979, the design was already dated. Production was moved to Glasgow, but only 34 cars were built there before receivership in 1985. Well, that's a quick look at the rise and fall of Scotland's automaking industry, although many parts plants still exist. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for viewing.